So, listening and learning findings and next steps, and I'm going to start with the findings of our listening and learning tour and the process that went into that, and then where we go from here. So the listening and learning, just a quick recap of what I did and what we did. Really, it was a collective effort, and how all those results came to be. Part of it was an in-person conversation that I was having with the community, and that meant meeting with groups wherever they occurred, and I solicited the help of the board and the community to actively engage with those groups. So that found me out with the Chamber of Commerce and various Rotaries from around the district, and Kiwanis clubs, and parent groups, and wherever it was that we could meet with folks, and we were meeting with them. And as I was out listening with the community and the groups that I was meeting with, it was essentially listening for resounding themes from the community. Lots of folks had things that they told us about whether they thought the school did really well, what our schools do really well, and what our district does really well, but they also had ideas for improvement or things that we could focus on. And when you hear an idea from one group and you hear the idea from a different group and from another group, then you start to recognize that there's a theme here. And so in my mind, I was collecting those themes and sharing some of my efforts with the board through Q's News weekly memos, sharing those thoughts with the cabinet, sharing those thoughts with other administrators, walking around the buildings with all of our principals this summer and this fall, and saying, hey, I heard this, what do you think about that? And just kind of bouncing ideas around looking for those themes. And so in my mind, I was creating these themes, but at the same time, you all know we were doing the listening and learning tour via thought exchange. And that was a digital conversation we were having with our community, saying, share your best thoughts, and we want to hear what they are and what you all think of each other's thoughts. So folks could rate those thoughts and tell us whether or not they thought they were good ideas or bad ideas. And I want to show you something that you haven't seen, but I had access to in the background about what does it look like when a community sort of talks to itself in a digital space. And it looks like this, and it's really kind of cool, if it works. So I'll speed it up. So this is 50 times the speed. And if it plays, this is that moment where you cross your fingers and say, please, if there is a God of technology, please let him smile on just one time. So this is the idea. This is it, folks. You're watching in real time what happened as people shared their thoughts. So this little icon, you can see little heads in there if you can make it out. And that's the people themselves as they logged on. And then inside that concentric circle were the thoughts that they were sharing. And as people then logged on a second time, they were then rating the thoughts of others to see which ideas made the most sense and which ideas kind of didn't make a lot of sense for the community. And so you can watch this. I think at speed 50, it takes a few minutes to get through the entire duration because we left this open for several weeks on end. But what you can kind of see is, if you look to the center of the circle now, there are some power players in our community. There are people who are sharing thoughts that made a lot of sense. I don't know who they were because the whole thing is anonymous. But there, you can see in this group, there's representative of about 50 people, and around those 50 people are these thoughts. And that's what I like about this tool, because so often when you go out with a survey or you ask a group, I'm thinking about A or B, what do you all think? I make half of you angry, and the other half of you feel like you win. And that's polarizing. And what this does is it's constructive depolarization, because the people stand on the outside and they rate the ideas on the inside. And the top thoughts are the ones that win. It's not the people who are the loudest. It's not the people, no offense to our board, but you all know, it's not the people who show up at the board meeting screaming loudest, but it's the top thoughts that matter. And that's why this was such an important process for us. And you can see how it's starting to gravitate now, because there's folks who are getting really, really interested about like structures, and they're interested in things like technology. And there's other people that are interested in the human side of schools, and they're bragging about our teachers, and they're bragging about our staff, and they're bragging about culture and things like that. It's really interesting what it does for our community. And so I'll stop this here and then show you what we created as a result of that. So when you combine, hopefully I'll stop it. Maybe I'll stop it. And so we're going to have all of this available at 7:30 this evening. You'll be able to go to the website and you'll see this. And if you click on this first link here, the thought exchange link, what you're going to see is our results website. And in our effort to be radically transparent, you'll see exactly what everyone said. If you scroll to the bottom of this page and you want to view the thoughts, you can read virtually each and every comment that was made throughout our community, and you can just read it sort of old school, the thoughts themselves and the stars and where it kind of ranked and how it fell. And that's really cool, but I actually think an even better way to look at it, if you could peek inside my mind, would be to say, well, I want to see how the thoughts that we just looked at connect to the themes that I heard from within the group. And so what you see here, and it's kind of small to see, but in this first one is a conversation about pay and insurance. A lot of our employees were interested in pay and insurance. The second highest rated category that we had was great teachers. Our community, both inside and out, wanted to brag about the quality of our teachers, which I think is really cool. You can see there's a couple of different conversations in here. So you'll have the interactive bar charts and the comment reports and everything else. And we got to the end of that process, and it took us some time to put these themes together in the comments. And then this becomes the pivot point. So I'm calling this the pivot point into the next phase of the work that we're gonna do together. So like I just told you a few minutes ago, we're linking all of this to the website and releasing it publicly. And then we're planning our future together. It's not the Board of Education and me going back and closed room and being secret and hiding this from our community, but it's something we have to do with the community. I've said since the beginning that we're trying to develop an ownership culture. None of us are interested in bringing something out to the community and asking for folks to buy in. I don't think that works anymore. Frankly, I don't think that leadership works anymore. It's work that we have to do together. And so we're going to be deliberately developmental about the process that we're going to undertake and try to develop this ownership mindset within our community. So that's going to lead us to 2 big, broad focus areas and 3 task forces connected to those broad areas. The first broad area is innovation and student learning pathways, and I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. And we're going to put 2 task forces to work under that, an elementary and a secondary task force. The second broad area is efficiency and resource management. So let's talk just a little bit about efficiency and resource management. This group's going to audit, review current efficiency and resource processes to identify opportunities for streamlining and enhancing in an effort to maximize effectiveness with priorities rated from there. So we were careful and thoughtful about the word resources. We're not just talking about money. That's typically what we think of when we think of resources. And I think some early iteration of this task force, we were talking about budget and finance specifically, but it's more than that. When we think about our resources, we can think about things like busing and transportation. We want to talk about that. Our resources are in our buildings and in our facilities. We know that there's a huge part of the community that wants to have a conversation about whether or not we're efficiently and effectively utilizing our facilities. We can talk about our staff. We can talk about our budget. We can talk about our time. That's a big part of this conversation. That's also a resource. So we broadly are talking about resources and how to be as efficient as possible. One of the things that the board shared with me early on, and I heard from the community over and over and over again, is that we owe it to our community to do our due diligence and show that we're being as effective and efficient as we can with the resources that we have before we go back out to the community for another bond request if we get to that point. So this is us doing our due diligence in that end. On the other side, equally important, more important, arguably, is innovation and student learning pathways. And there was a big cry from our community, both from the exchange and from the folks that I met in person, that said, there's all kinds of cool stuff that's happening from around Texas and really all around the country. And we want to be an innovative district in that way. We want to think differently about what this might look like for our kids and pathways as they matriculate through our system. And I'm excited to have that conversation. I think there's a lot of folks who are really excited to have that conversation about what that looks like. And we're very thoughtful that this is bigger and broader than just technology. We're not just talking about one-to-one initiatives and putting devices in kids' hands. But it's really how do we educate our children and educate them differently along these pathways. We're also very thoughtful about using pre-K through 14 to try to reach even further into the pre-K curriculum and what it means to have readiness when kids come to school at kindergarten and being deliberately developmental about that. But also on the other end of the spectrum, as we talked about before, if you have a goal, if you have a ceiling and that's what you're reaching for, and that goal or that ceiling is graduation, and that's all the further you think, then our job sort of ends at graduation the day they cross the stage, right? And so we're being really, really thoughtful that we want to reach beyond graduation. We want to identify our system as the pre-K through 14 spectrum. And we know that that's coming. That's coming from the state, and it needs to come from us as well. Is being thoughtful about that handoff so that every child from our system has a successful launch. I think that's what we all want. And again, prioritizing recommendations. So what does that then look like within the elementary and secondary pieces? Review, discuss, and submit a recommendation to the superintendent and ultimately the board regarding establishing these learning pathways for elementary and secondary age students. And this is going to require us to think differently about our system. We all know we have numerous facilities. It's one of the things that our community has said loudly is that we need to re-examine the number of facilities we have and how our kids move through those facilities. So identifying how those pathways are going to work kids from elementary school through middle and junior high school and even into high school is going to make all the difference in the world for us. And we're going to kick off these task forces in the very near future, hopefully January, February, because we recognize that as they're having conversations, we may have to revisit a future bond campaign, and we may have to revisit some future funding ideas as a school district, and have that conversation very deliberately, so that we can then set off on whatever the next steps are for our school district. It's leading into strategic planning, but it's not strategic planning at this point. At this point, it's designing our future. And that's why we've chosen that to be our catchphrase. So what would this look like if you were trying to look at a timeline? We're not assigning months and we're not assigning years. We're actually just calling this, if you look to the far right side of this graph, we're calling it near-term work, mid-term work, and long-term work. Near-term work is to set off these task forces as I just described and let them do their work and let them do their divergent thinking. And then as we start to pivot towards mid-term work, that's where we start to utilize convergent thinking and bringing these groups back together so that we can have reports back out and make further decisions. And then ultimately we start to look at long-term. And that's why we put a number of subgroups underneath there and action items. We don't know what that future looks like at this point. This is just a projected where we're going to go down this path. And so then we get to this final slide and we ask, frankly, do we want your genius? If any part of these conversations has been of interest to you, if you want to have this conversation about what does an innovative classroom look like, and we need parents, we need teachers, we need administrators, we need community members, we need people without kids in our system, because they're telling us that they need future workforce readiness, and they have a vested interest in this process. If this sets out the next 10 years of work that we're going to do as a school district, every single soul in this community should have a voice in this process, because we all have a vested interest in building the capacity of our community. I was asked earlier this week, why would somebody want to join one of these task forces? My response is, why would somebody not want to join one of these task forces? The work is that fundamental to the future of our district. But they have to be committed to radical transparency. This is not a group of 30 people that are going to meet in an enclave and have their decision made and then profess it out to the community and say, ta-da, we've done our work. I think the hardest work of this group is going to be that they have to be radically transparent and a key communicator within our district. The only way that these task forces fail is if we don't communicate. My ideal version of the work that we're going to do together is when some of these recommendations start coming from a task force and nobody from the community shows up at a board meeting and says, I didn't know about that. Now, not everybody may agree with the recommendations, but I don't want anybody to show up and say, I never heard about this. So whoever serves on this committee has got to be committed to communicating. And we're going to ask folks to fill out an application. We've got that online as well. And we're going to collect those through December 31st. And then the task forces are going to be set in motion in January. And they're going to work for about 4 to 6 months. January, February, they're going to kick off. It depends on how we can get people's schedules coordinated. And they're going to work for 4 to 6 months to come up with some of these recommendations and ideas. So where can you go to see this? And this is our logo, by the way. This is our new logo for this work that we're going to do together, designing our future. Victoria Independent School District. So you're going to see that everywhere, on absolutely everything. I want to go back to the website so you get a chance to take a peek at that. The model itself, I'm going to bring that up so you can see it. So essentially this is a narrative form of the model that the work is going to do. the meeting ideas and details that will come as a result of the meeting, some resources, if you want to look at the resources that these groups are going to take a look at and start talking about, some of the intended outcomes of that work. We're also put in here some of the marketing plan, both incoming and outgoing communications efforts. Also on this page, the flow chart that I just showed you. And then lastly at the bottom is the task force interest form. And again, we're just asking some basic demographic information, names and addresses and such, and then we have a small piece at the very bottom asking folks why they want to serve on this task force. Why they want to serve on this task force. And we're asking folks to just put some narrative down on paper. We're going to do our very, very best to make sure that we have a pretty good geographic representation on each of these task forces. We feel like it's really important to reach as far as we can for the entire Victoria Independent School District. So we're going to be looking at a geographic spread. We're also going to be looking to balance these based on, as I said before, staff, parents, community members, administrators, and so get a nice representation across the community in that regard as well. So, that said, that's what I have about where we are and where we're going. If you all have any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Baldwin.
I just have a couple. Dr. Shepherd, I appreciate you very much. You know me, unfortunately not the most patient person, and so I appreciate this, and I was very much anticipating. Can you, in the radical transparency, share a little bit more about the duration of the application process, just for the public to know what their, maybe the expectations or how they can go about doing that? Is it just to simply fill that out, or is there anything else?
That's it. Fill it out. Fill it out. Turn it in.
Very simple.
We're trying to keep it simple. We don't want to make it overly complicated. Thank you.
Before you run off, I would just like to say that watching this has been a heck of a lot of fun. I've been really excited about tonight. I hope, I've told, in anticipation of this coming, I've told people to tune in tonight to go 7:30 at the website. Are you live streaming? No? Okay. Well, that could be fun too. And I really hope this becomes a contagious conversation, because you said it really well. We need your genius. I hope people are at the Dairy Queen going, hey, do you know what they're talking about over there? What do you think? What do you want to do? What would it look like if? And so I ask you, or anyone who's watching this archive video after the fact, make an early New Year's resolution to a contagious conversation and sign up for a task force. We want you. We need you. I've encouraged Dr. Shepherd, I know I'm going to steal your thunder, to go to the Chamber of Commerce and our business leaders and ask them to allow people paid time off to come serve on these task forces. Because I don't want there to be barriers to our community getting to participate in the very important work. And so I hope our business leaders will step up to the plate and allow, I know that's a big ask. I'm sure my husband's probably going, boy, but it's a big ask, but it's important. And so I think that if you didn't talk about it, but each of these task forces will have two board members assigned to them as a liaison from the board, not to direct traffic because this is a conversation, but to work in collaboration with our community. And I think this is going to be the most exciting thing since I don't know what, but who knows where we'll go. And I look forward to working with all of you on the next steps. That's why we hired you.
I've got a question.
Shoot.
Hey, how do you see the task force team being constructed? Or maybe like, when you say there's a leader and a communicator, what's your vision there?
Yeah, so to kick it off, we're going to, I anticipate assigning some of my cabinet to be co-facilitators, and probably the remainder of my cabinet to be facilitators as needed. So as an example, if we get into conversations about maintenance and some deferred maintenance that we've done in the past and anticipated maintenance, we bring in Johnny Urbano to support and potentially folks in that regard. And board members will serve as liaisons back to the board. So one of the things that I'm kicking around is in future board meetings, the liaisons to the task forces would actually be giving reports for the rest of the board, because I don't want you guys to lose track of what the task force work is as well. And then, of course, community members who get involved, teachers who get involved, administrators who get involved. We may change the leadership of those committees over time, depending on how the conversations evolve, but our cabinet and administrative team will be committed to facilitating the work of this group. It's that magic combination that we all use as parents, right? And we learned this in our PLC training, that there's this magic combination of lots and lots and lots of pressure. That's okay. Good parents do that for their kids. But if that's all you do, you crush them. So we've got a lot of pressure on these task forces because there's some big conversations that need to take place. But that whatever pressure you apply to something, you have to apply adequate amounts of support. And so we're trying to backfill all the support we can. We're going to do some leadership training in December for all of us to make sure our leaders are internally trained to offer that support. And we're going to lend the resources of the district to support the work of the task forces. And the idea is that that's how diamonds are made in the center of the earth, right? Adequate amount of pressure and support. And what we're looking for coming out of these task forces are the diamond ideas. So make no mistake, there's a lot of pressure coming to these task forces, but there's going to be a lot of support too. And together we're going to make those diamonds.
And if you ever wanted to learn about what goes on in VISD, this is the place for you.
That's correct.
Where we're going to go, what's happening and where we're going.